I think the characteristic of our program is that we've adapted to a non-lethal program using strictly non-lethal approaches and transferring, I think it was in the year 2000, from a contract with USDA to one without them and using our own resources, working with our ranchers. And Bill Jensen, who you saw there from Marin County, is one of the innovators that worked with us. And so from that time to date, our cost of the program has significantly declined. We had an $80,000 program when we were in contract with the federal government, and we're down to about $30,000. And our losses for livestock have been reduced from about short of 6% down to about 2% of the sheep population. So it's been very successful, and you heard, most of these ranchers speak that they've gained a lot more respect for the wildlife, and that's been our case as well. Now, they're still active in protecting their livestock on their own property, but we don't engage with the federal government to perform those services. So we've had a very successful program. The costs have gone down. The losses to the ranchers have significantly declined statistically, and I have the least amount of problems I've ever had in dealing with ranchers, community, politicians, my great colleagues sitting arm in arm here. So that's been my story, and it's been rewarding to be.
Well, let's see, starting with the experiences in Marin, it's been pretty amazing over the last, it's now in its 13th year. So process-wise, when I look back in, I think it was 1996 when the controversy erupted, and it was really over the use of the poison that was mentioned in the film, the compound 1080 used in, as you saw in their livestock protection collars. So Marin was going to be one of 3 counties in Northern California to experiment with this poison. And it created quite a debate throughout the county. And the County Board of Supervisors were inundated with calls from people who said, we don't want our tax dollars used that way. And we formed a coalition. One of my cohorts here, Cindy Machado from Marin Humane Society, we formed a coalition of conservation groups, animal welfare groups, and essentially our message was, we don't want our tax dollars used this way in the county. We met with our Board of Supervisors, we met with Stacy, other people from the department, and really what came out was a recognition that we're in a county with shared values, with agriculture, environmental, wildlife values, ethos, and that we needed to find an alternative. And I really give kudos to Stacy for working with us collectively, getting the input from all different stakeholders to say we can find a better solution, there's a better way that works for our community. And part of that was really that kind of dialogue and getting people together, and Stacy helped facilitate these meetings that were really rancorous. I mean, we can look back and say, it was like, because you're dealing with generations of ranchers who expect this, and understandably that they just, you take something away and they wonder, what are we going to get? So we had to show them that there was another way, that they would benefit from this. And ultimately, we ended up adopting this Marin County Livestock and Wildlife Protection Program that, as Stacy has mentioned, has really reduced losses. So we now have the empirical data to say this is a success. So those are some of the lessons, that you can find, can find common ground often with stakeholders that are at opposite ends. So that's the first part. Let's see, second part, what can we learn from modern science regarding predator management? I think what we've learned is that we are doing it wrong. When you look at this slaughter every year, 5 million animals by wildlife services, approximately 120,000 predators. It's ecologically insane, it's ethically indefensible, it's ecologically unjust, economically unjust. And there is a better way, and what we know from science is that predators matter. Large carnivores, as we saw in this film, they have a role, a pivotal role. So what we know is that we need to find a different way to coexist with large carnivores, and that's what all of our groups really here are doing in different ways. We are working collaboratively to do that, and it really is something where, you know, we have to work together, conservation, animal protection groups, to find a different way. And thankfully, I think we're on a good path to do that. So that's modern science. Let's see, last question was
barriers.
Barriers.
You've
I would say
touched upon some of them, but
political. You know, I mean, there's a lot, and I would say political is one. We have state and wildlife agencies that are stuck in an old paradigm of thinking. So shifting that is really, really challenging. And one is political, and another is education. You know, we're dealing at a time when nature deficit disorder is a real reality out there, and what that basically says is that as we sort of urbanize, kids are getting more detached from nature, and that's really dangerous because as people feel separate from nature, they don't feel you can't protect what you don't love. So I think we have another challenge to educate the masses.
How I began to know that wildlife services and lethal methods didn't work was working on ranches that had, you know, sheep and cattle, and seeing that the problem never lessened. No matter how many you killed, you were still had the same problem. It was a constant battle. And also seeing, you know, when you're a rancher, death is not something that you have to become comfortable with. There's a saying that if you're going to have livestock, you're going to have dead stock. So death was not something that, you know, wasn't the problem. It was needless death. And when you see animals being killed, and you know that the only way that it'll really work, killing an animal, is if you see it in there attacking your livestock, that if you remove that animal, you saved. And I understand why people don't want to see their livestock killed, because it's brutal. But just killing random animals in the hopes that that's going to solve a problem, most of them that probably never would have predated on your livestock, is, to me, it was akin to, you know, someone robs your house, so you just go out and start shooting up the neighborhood. It's revenge, and it's not solving anything. So, and the ranches I were on that didn't use lethal methods seemed to have less problems. So you kind of figure it out, what works and what doesn't work. So fast forward to, you know, the ranching we have now, and we calve out there along and with the coyotes. The coyotes will come in, they'll be out there on the outskirts of the herd as they're calving, and they come in, they eat afterbirth, and they leave, you know. So based on some ranchers I know, they would see the coyotes there and they would be shooting them up, or, you know, calling wildlife services, and all they were doing is coming in and eating the afterbirth. That's what being around your cattle and around your animals, you kind of figure out you're maybe fighting a battle that you didn't need to fight. And it just, and I think the sad thing is that wildlife services is basically operating under this shadow, because most people don't even know it exists. The agency exists, and when you see firsthand the devastation that causes, like I've seen dogs and coyote snares, and it's just, and if it were working, that would be one thing where you could say, well, it's a necessary evil. But the fact that it not only doesn't work, and that ranchers have a moral obligation to do everything you can to protect your livestock, to not draw the predators in before you go to killing them for being there. It's like, you don't go to a national park as a backpacker or whatever, and now we know that you don't go there and leave your food all out, and then if a bear comes in and causes problems, you don't call the park ranger and say, hey, can you shoot it? You know, you take the responsibility to do the extra work that it takes to prevent that problem from happening in the first place. So I just think that bringing awareness to people about wildlife services and what they're doing, and how it's not solving anything, is super important. And as a rancher, I don't want my name or business associated with causing that kind of mayhem to animals when it's completely unnecessary.
Well, one of the challenges we had with USDA was this transition. That, you know, when we were working with them, we wanted them to be a party to the program, because it was some level of comfort with our ranchers that they were there and traditionally been there. But they had a difficult time transitioning from a lethal program to using or managing non-lethal techniques. You know, here's what we really have done in a nutshell. We've put up 30 or 40 miles, maybe up to 50 miles worth of new fencing in a cost share program. The funding that we used to use with the federal government, we used that to buy materials in a cost share way up to a certain limit with each rancher in the program. And then once their program was effective, have electrified fences, and we cost share the guard animals. And then we've negotiated lambing shed type of activities, putting special fences down in gulches where normally there would be easy traffic and a lot of harborage and habitat for coyotes to move in and out. We have 44 guard animals for 26 ranchers. We have llamas, we have donkeys, we have electrified fences, and we've been successful enough to have enough eyes look at it to say this could be an option for us.
Part of the battle here and part of the beauty of this film is not just to educate the masses of the public out there, but it's also to educate members of Congress, you know, who are often largely unaware that this goes on, because this agency really has been veiled in secrecy. You know, part of the aim with this and ending with the website to take action is for people to go there, get copies of this, distribute it, go meet with their members of Congress, tell them about it, ask them to co-sponsor these bills, go to our various organizations' websites, you know, find out what they can do. And then we'll build the momentum and we'll get more co-sponsors, because the reality is when people find out about this, they don't like it, you know, and that includes a lot of members of Congress. We have a special guest here. His name is Tom Knudsen, and he is an investigative reporter with the Sacramento Bee, and he did last year a 4-part cover series about wildlife services that really exposed this agency and catapulted it to another level, bringing the kind of attention that is necessary. And he has since continued to cover this issue in a major way, has just dedicated himself to exposing the kind of atrocities that you've seen in there. But that doesn't even touch on some of the atrocities that have been really uncovered by this agency. I'll also acknowledge that 2 days ago at the Crest Theater in Sacramento, we had a screening here and we had a similar panel discussion, and our new president of our Fish and Game Commission moderated that and introduced and gave some really remarkable comments about the need for predator conservation and leading the way in California. And he has great energy to try to reform the way that I don't want to use the word manage, that we steward predators in the state. And there are many people here in organizations, including HSUS, Jennifer Fearing, who are helping to lead the way with that. So again, just check out our websites and we'll get you involved.
Very good.